It started as a joke, just another night on live TV. The crowd laughed, the lights dazzled, the vibe playful, harmless. But that moment, it would take a sharp turn from laughter to stillness. On one couch, Will Smith, beloved Hollywood star. On the other, President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, sitting quietly in a plain suit, his presence calm, steady. The host nudged Will with a grin. Ever thought of running for president? You'd be up against this guy. Will laughed. The crowd followed. He looked over at Traoré and said, without a trace of malice, well, I'd at least bring some style to the table. No offense, Mr. President, but it looks like you're... Taylor gave up halfway. More laughter. Traoré smiled politely. It was just a joke. The kind late-night audiences love. But then the room shifted. The president leaned in, fingers laced calmly together. He waited for the noise to die, and then his eyes locked on Will's. What he said wasn't loud. It wasn't angry, but it stopped time. I don't wear power, he said quietly. I carry it. Silence. He turned gently toward Will. In Burkina Faso, there are children who walk barefoot for miles, just to study under a tree. If I wore a $5,000 suit, I'd be stealing from them. The smile vanished from Will's face. You create films that make the world laugh and cry. I carry the weight of every child, every mother, every decision, even the silent ones. If style could fix a hospital, I'd wear gold. The room didn't move. No claps, no fake chuckles. Just stillness, because what Traoré said wasn't a rebuttal. It was reality. It was raw. It was grace. And it hit hard. Will leaned back slowly, eyes blinking. The crowd saw it. The cameras caught it. Tears. Quiet. Real. By the time the show ended, that clip, just 90 seconds long, was already everywhere. Backstage, no one spoke. Will sat alone, staring at the floor, sipping water. A producer whispered, "You okay?" He nodded, but said nothing. Online, millions were watching, commenting, crying. That wasn't a comeback, someone wrote. That was truth, wrapped in silence. I showed this to my 12-year-old son, another said. We both cried. Later that night, Will walked quietly down the hallway. He found Traoré sitting alone, reading a small book. Will paused. "Mr. President." Traoré looked up, gently. Will's voice cracked. "I needed that. Thank you." Two men, one from Hollywood, one from the Sahel. They shook hands. And in that silent gesture, something larger than a viral clip was born. Respect, humility, truth. By morning, news anchors replayed the moment on loop. Influencers wept. African elders smiled. Small radios in Burkina Faso played the clip in. Open markets, children, farmers, mothers, all listening. All proud. They didn't see a politician. They saw a father. A protector. A man who didn't clap back. He stood still. In America, Will posted a video. I cracked a joke, but he gave me wisdom. I've shared rooms with kings and legends, but this hit different. And far away, in a small hospital in Ouagadougou, an 11-year-old girl fighting leukemia whispered to her mom, "Mama, he's not like the others." Her hands trembled. The pain was constant now. But through the haze of illness, she held onto one simple hope. Muna, just 11 years old, scribbled something on a crumpled page, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Can we send this to him?" The nurse paused, then read the note. And in that moment, she didn't see a sick child. She saw pure belief. She took a photo of the letter and posted it to Twitter, captioned simply, "She has only days left, but she wants to thank her president." The letter read, "Dear President Traoré, I'm sick, but when I saw you on TV, I forgot the pain for a moment. You made me proud. You didn't shout, you didn't joke back, you just spoke like a real papa. Thank you. I wish I could hug you." By noon, it had over 2 million likes. But it wasn't the numbers that mattered. It was the silence it created in hearts around the world. In a quiet embassy room in New York, President Ibrahim Traoré sat alone. He saw the tweet, and for a while he said nothing. No press, no reaction, just stillness. Then, without a word, he stood, put on his jacket, and looked toward his staff. "Cancel the next meeting. I need to call a child." Back in Ouagadougou, the hospital phone rang. Muna's mother answered, confused. "Yes, hello?" A warm, steady voice came through. "Madame, this is President Ibrahim Traoré. May I please speak to your daughter?" The room froze. The nurse gasped. Muna's eyes widened. Disbelief, wonder, awe. The phone was placed in her hand, and then he spoke. Not as a leader, not as a public figure, but as a human. He asked her about her favorite color, her favorite food, her favorite thing to draw, and she giggled through the pain. Then she whispered like a secret, "Are you really the man from TV?" Traoré chuckled softly. "Yes, little one, but more importantly, I'm your friend." Tears fell from nurses, from her mother, from the strongest people in the room, because this wasn't about politics. This was truth meeting innocence. He told her, "You've done more than many grown-ups in this world. You reminded them what kindness looks like." "You are stronger than me, Muna." His voice cracked, just a little. And after the call ended, President Traoré stood quietly, turned to the window, watching the streets of New York buzz below. But his heart was still in that tiny hospital room with the girl who had just reminded him of everything that mattered. That night he made a decision. This wasn't going to be just another viral moment. It was going to be a movement. He wouldn't be remembered as a trending figure. He would become a reason. Will approached him slowly. The tension in the studio felt like silence had weight. Traoré, the president, stood still. He didn't shift, didn't smile, just nodded once, quietly. "I don't speak to impress," he said, his voice low, steady. "I speak because the truth is meant to be lived, not performed. No cameras, no crowd, just two men. One known for his charm, the other for his courage." Will didn't reply. He just looked at him. And Traoré saw it, the thing most people miss behind the fame, the flair, the jokes. He saw the vulnerability. "You carry the world's laughter, Will," the president said gently. "But have you ever let the world hear your pain?" And just like that, something inside will crack. A fissure beneath the skin of the persona. He nodded almost imperceptibly, fighting back the tears that had waited years to fall. Outside the studio, the moment had already been clipped. shared, captioned, dissected. The internet was stirring, but what was happening now wasn't about fame. It was about healing. In a quiet Philadelphia living room, Will's mother, Carolyn, watched the clip alone, her fingers trembling as she held her phone. She had seen her son make the world laugh, cry, and think, but never like this. She texted him, "You've made movies, baby, but tonight you made meaning. That man reminded me of your father, calm, firm, kind. Don't lose this moment." Will stared at the message for a long time. You made meaning. 3 words. They hit harder than any review or award. And for the first time since he was a teenager, he cried in front of her, even if only through a screen, because something in Traoré's words had pierced through the fame, through the armor of years, straight into the part of him he thought was buried, the part that questioned worth, image, and whether he'd ever been seen. Beyond the persona. He opened his phone, opened the notes app he hadn't used in years, and he began to write. Not a joke, not a monologue, not a script. A letter. The next morning it was posted to Instagram. A single image. Traoré on set, standing still. Unbothered. The caption was quiet, but it roared. President Traoré, you didn't clap back. You didn't laugh it off. You gave me truth. In your stillness I saw my storms. In your dignity I saw my doubts. You reminded me, and maybe reminded the world, that a man doesn't prove his strength by force or flash, but by how he carries truth. Thank you. I'm learning. I'm listening. The post exploded. Millions reshared it. Politicians praised it. Parents read it to their children. Young men cried. And in Ouagadougou, the office of President Traoré received hundreds of letters, but one stood out. It wasn't from a celebrity, a journalist, or a world leader. It was from a little boy in Harlem, and at the end, in a shaky pencil written scrawl, it read, "I want to be calm like you. When people laugh at me." President Traoré folded the letter with quiet hands. He turned to his advisers and said simply, "This isn't about what happened on TV anymore. Something is waking up on the other side of the world." In Brooklyn, a 12-year-old boy named Marcus sat on the edge of his bed. His shoes had holes. His classmates had laughed, called him names, pushed him in the hallway. His mom made him tea. It didn't help. That night, as she scrolled through her phone, she came across the clip, the one with Will and the president. She turned up the volume. Marcus looked up. Traoré's voice filled the room. The world doesn't need louder men. It needs quieter hearts with deeper truths. Marcus froze. He replayed it. Once, then again. 10 times. Then, without a word, he pulled out an old, torn notebook from beneath his pillow, and he wrote, "Dear Mr. Traoré, today I was laughed at, but I didn't scream. I remembered your voice. I think that made me strong." He folded the letter. He wasn't sure if he'd ever send it, but in the act of writing something eased, and for the first time in weeks, he slept through the night. In a modest presidential office half a world away, Traoré sat at his desk, scrolling through a filtered list of messages. One email stopped him cold. A scanned letter. Handwritten. A child's voice. Marcus. He read it 3 times, then looked out the window and whispered to his aide, "We lead nations. But sometimes we just need to hold one child's pain." He didn't wait. He asked for a call to be arranged. That same evening, Marcus was called to the school counselor's office. He panicked. Was he in trouble? They handed him a phone. "Hello?" He said, a pause. Then, "This is Ibrahim Traoré. I read your letter." Marcus froze. He thought it was a prank. But the voice continued, gentle, calm. "You are stronger than many adults I've met. And I want you to know you gave me hope today." This wasn't just a viral clip. This was a crack in the noise, a fracture in the system. Through it, something had slipped in, quiet, ancient, unstoppable. Truth. And it was waking something up, not in stadiums, but in living rooms, in bedrooms, in notebooks, in the silence between two men, one known for his charm, the other for his courage, and both in that moment seen. Marcus cried, not the loud, dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the kind that shakes your chest from the inside, the kind that comes not when you're hurt, but when someone finally sees you. The next day, with no cameras, no entourage, and no headlines, Will Smith stepped off a quiet plane in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. No press conferences, no designer suits, just plain clothes and quiet intention. When President Traoré saw him walk across the dry earth of the school courtyard, he smiled gently. "I didn't expect Hollywood to come so humbly," he said, half joking. Will chuckled, but then paused, eyes steady. "I came because what you said didn't just touch me. It changed me." They didn't sit on a stage. They sat beneath a weathered tree beside a local school, where barefoot children played, unaware of the quiet history unfolding nearby. Will reached into his jacket and handed Traoré a folded paper. "It's a list," he said softly, "of every apology I owe, from the past, from fame, from pain I carried into other people's lives." Traoré opened it. "Read the names," folded it again with care. "Healing," he replied, "doesn't start when we fix the world. It starts when we finally tell the truth to ourselves." Just then, a small girl ran toward them with a flower, yellow, half-crushed, clutched in her tiny hand. She gave it to Will. He knelt, smiled. It wasn't a scene for applause. There were no microphones, no standing ovation. But it was more human than anything Will had felt in years. In a dusty barber shop at the edge of town, a flickering TV replayed the now viral moment, the one where a late-night jab gave way to silence, and a president's calm voice echoed around the world. A young man named Idris wiped a tear. "This is the first time I've seen a president speak with his soul." The barber, an old man who had seen regimes come and go, nodded slowly. He didn't just speak to Will. He spoke to all of us who've been laughed at for being quiet, for being different. That day in that small shop with dusty fans and rusted scissors, the clip didn't just trend, it transformed. They turned off the television and just sat in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because they had just witnessed something pure in a world that too often feels cold. 2 days later, a letter arrived at the Burkina Embassy in Los Angeles. It was handwritten, not typed, not formal. It was from Jada Pinkett Smith. She had watched the moment live, then rewatched it, then cried. Her words bled with honesty. "Dear President Traoré, I don't know if you realize what you did, not just to Will, but to millions of men watching. Men who've never been told that dignity doesn't mean domination. In one quiet moment, with no raised voice, you taught the world that calm is not weakness. It's a quiet form of strength. You have no idea how badly this world needed that message. President Traoré read it alone. He folded the letter gently, placed it in his worn leather journal, then turned to his aide. "We don't need louder speeches," he said. "We need louder silence." And across continents, something strange began to happen. Clips of Traoré's words were subtitled in Mandarin and Arabic, in Portuguese and Swahili, not because it was viral, because it felt like truth had finally found a voice. Universities debated it. Psychologists analyzed it. Churches quoted it. Mosques discussed it. People weren't just sharing the video. They were pausing their lives to reflect on it. Even a late-night comedian who initially mocked the moment came back on air to apologize. "I thought it was just another awkward celebrity moment, but I see now it was history being made." In Burkina Faso, a local school renamed its library. They called it the Quiet Voice of Truth, in honor of President Traoré, because by then this moment had outgrown television, outgrown Will Smith, outgrown borders. It had become a mirror, a symbol of something the world had nearly forgotten: dignity. 3 days later, Will Smith made a quiet, unannounced appearance on a daytime talk show in New York. No jokes, no rehearsed stories, just a chair, a mic, and a man who had clearly been changed. His voice cracked. "I've made movies. I've made millions laugh, but I've never had a moment stop me the way he did." He took a deep breath. When President Traoré looked at me that night, it was like he saw through the performance, not just mine, but the one the world forces us to wear every day. He paused. The room was silent. He reminded me what it means to be a man, not through power, but through peace. Somewhere in the back, someone wiped a tear, but no one clapped. No one needed to. That same night, Traoré's assistant entered the office, phone in hand. "Mr. President, it's from Will." The email was short, but raw. "I've spoken with my heart to the world, but I need to speak with yours. I'd like to come to Ouagadougou, not as an actor, just as a man." Traoré smiled softly. "Let him come," he said. "Let him see where real truth grows, not in palaces, but in pain." The next morning, Will landed in Burkina Faso again. Still no cameras, no press, just Traoré standing at the gate in a plain shirt. He extended his hand. Will took it. No words, just an understanding that two paths, separated by fame and continents, had finally crossed, in a moment the world would never forget. Day 6. A small impromptu press gathering outside a youth center in Ouagadougou. Will stood beside Traoré. No teleprompters, his voice steady. This man didn't clap back. He didn't fight fire with fire. He showed me and all of us what dignity looks like when the world expects pride. He turned to the crowd. "If you're watching this, ask yourself, when was the last time you listened with your heart?" Then Traoré stepped forward. "We don't heal by mocking," he said. "We heal by recognizing the wounds in each other." There was no cheering, just stillness. The video went live. 40 million views in 24 hours. But for once, it wasn't for entertainment. It was because in a broken world, People had seen something pure. Dear viewer, if this story touched you, if even one moment made your eyes well up, subscribe, like, comment below. Not for the algorithm, but so more people can feel what you just felt. Let us know which part moved you the most. Let this not be the end.